Welcome to Operation Retirement Readiness, where Amy and Mike, two certified financial planners, talk about how military members can prepare for transition and how veterans can prepare for ultimate retirement. This podcast represents the views of the hosts and any guest. It is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax, financial, or legal advice. All information is regarded to be from reliable sources. The hosts are not responsible for any losses, damages, or liabilities that may arise from the use of this podcast. This podcast is not intended to replace professional advice.
Hey, Mike, how's it going today?
Good. How are you, Amy?
Doing well. We're well into the year now, and we've been talking about New Year's resolutions. Probably about half or more people have probably fallen off the resolution wagon. If that's you, I don't think it's too late to either begin or pick up where you left off.
No, exactly. You've got a choice. You're at that fork in the road that they talk about, and you can either, double down your efforts and try to get back on track, or like Amy said, become one of the statistics of folks who don't actually follow through on their resolutions. So, encourage you, if it's something you really want to do, to just take the time and continue those steps to make it a reality.
And besides, even if you start a little bit late, if you wait another day to start, you're another day behind. So go ahead and start today. With that, Mike, what are we going to be talking about today?
My favorite subject, budgeting. What it is, why it's important, and some tips, techniques, and tools that you can use to keep on track and track your finances.
Budgeting is one of my favorites as well. It's probably no accident that the two of us landed in the financial planning world. But to a lot of folks, the mere mention of the word budget causes an immediate negative reaction. And I get it. And there's no talking anyone who feels like that out of feeling like that. And that's not our objective today. But understanding where your money goes and setting up a plan to help keep your spending aligned with your priorities is absolutely fundamental to a successful financial situation. You can call that process anything you'd like. You can call it monthly goal setting. You can call it an annual plan. You can call it anything you want, but the process behind budgeting and the key elements of it are absolutely essential.
So, and I got to be honest, I was being ironical. I really do not like budgeting. So I agree, you definitely need a plan, and I agree budgeting is important. And we'll talk a little bit about what I kind of do to make sure I stay on track. But I guess I wouldn't call it traditional budgeting. So, but like you said, the budget is a plan to help you focus on your spending, where that money's going, and really the goal is to align that with what's most important to you.
Well, I think it's critical that you backtracked and pointed out your sarcasm about budgeting, and the fact that you just do it in a way that works best for you, because that's the key to success here is using a tool, using a process that works for you. Budgeting, a lot of people think that it's meant to deprive yourself. It's like a diet. Nobody wants to be told that they shouldn't eat some entire food group or whatever. That's just not enjoyable. And that's not the point of a budget either. It's not meant to deprive yourself of joy. In fact, it's actually meant to facilitate the opposite. It's meant to give purpose behind your money. Now, having said that, if your income is limited and your bills and your debt payments and things like that is consuming pretty much all your income, then you do feel deprived of joy. But that's not a budget problem. What that means is that you either have to increase your income or reduce your mandatory expenses, which is not a fun process. But it is reality, and it is sort of outside of, what is meant by a budget. Yeah, that might point out the issue, but it's not the issue itself.
Yeah, exactly. And, in our last episode, we talked about debt. If you're carrying a lot of debt, you're paying a lot of interest expenses, especially now as rates have gone up. If you're carrying credit card debt, that's money that's going out the door that really isn't facilitating anything for you. It was your previous self paying for something, that now, or not paying for something that your future self now has to come up with. So if you can pay that down, all that extra interest payments that were going to the credit card company can now be used for things that do bring you joy, make you happier. So this kind of gets to the starting point of a budget. The first step is taking an inventory of all of your known expenses each month for housing, utilities, any kind of debt payments you have, all those things that recur on a set amount of time, and you write all those down. One of the challenges is those are kind of understood, and you can say, okay, well, I've got this much in expenses, and then I'm going to have this much left over. Problem is, a lot of people don't do a great job of tracking everything else, the smaller things, the going out to lunch or dinner each day, and some of those things, and that's what can kind of really add up.
Yeah, and that's a critical piece of the budget. So looking back at how you're spending, a lot of people know exactly what their mortgage or their rent payment is. They know about what their utilities cost, but they probably have no idea what they're spending on going out to lunch every single day, unless they have some thoughtful process behind analyzing what their rough monthly expense is for that particular thing. But so once you do collect all of your spending history, at least for probably the last 6 or so months, then it's time to consider whether your spending is reflecting your priorities. As an example, let's just pretend like 10% of your paycheck is going out to dinner and lunch or breakfast, or basically going out to eat. Are you happy spending 10% of your paycheck to do that? But what if you don't have money for vacation? So now you have a choice. So there's only so many dollars that come in. Do you continue spending 10% of your income going out to eat and things and not getting the annual vacation that you always hope that you get to take, but then don't have the money to take? Or would you rather cut your spending on going out to eat, as an example, in favor of aligning more money towards being able to afford the annual expense that you want? So taking that inventory of historical expenses and then determining whether the spending aligns with your priorities is sort of the first one of the first steps to creating your budget.
Budgeting is two parts. It's the math of where the money's going, but it's also the art of, is that really where you want your money going? And the good thing is there is a bunch of tools out there now that will allow you to track, easily track all of your spending, so you can see it, because having that visibility is really important. I'm sure you've had folks come in, to talk to you, and you're like, okay, where are you spending your money? And you ask them to kind of fill out a budget worksheet, and there should be, several $1,000s a month left over, but they're not, they don't have that money, and it's not, ending up in savings or anything like that. That is definitely one of the challenges. If you're not tracking stuff, having that idea, we're pretty bad about estimating what we really spend on specific things. What do you think about the tools out there that allow you to get a better handle on what you're spending?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a ton of good tools. Some of them are free. So some people literally write down their budget on a piece of paper. Some people use their favorite spreadsheet software. Those are pretty much free. There's other free tools out there, but then there's also apps that you can pay for. Just a few examples. This is by no means an endorsement or widespread, but you've got YNAB, which is short for You Need a Budget. You've got Every Dollar. You've got Monarch Money. I think some people were using Mint, but Mint has changed a little bit. Plenty of other options out there that are all across the spectrum in terms of price points. The bottom line is that the tool that is best is the tool that works best for you and the one you're going to use. There's pros and cons of all the tools that I mentioned. Some of the apps will automate that spending history that we talked about. It also gives you a foundation for how, the list of categories, because sometimes, the initial step of building your budget is to write down all the categories that you have expenses in, and it's hard to think of everything. It inevitably you're going to leave something off. So the tools can help, but you just have to evaluate which one you're actually going to use. There's no point spending money on an app that you're not going to use.
Yeah, exactly. One of the other things that, a lot of credit card companies, maybe like a month ago, probably sent you a, hey, here's what you spent in, 2023. And those are useful because those just give you the idea of, hey, this is where my money actually went. And, so figuring that out and looking at those, it can also be a big help. But yeah, plenty of tools out there to get that in place, get a budget going, and really the tracking piece and understanding is kind of the first step, as we talked about. And then like you said, Amy, aligning it with is that where you want to be. So how do you, I guess, what are your thoughts on, so you've got this and you've got where you were, by historical methods, but how do you figure out then how to kind of make changes to your budget to, if it's not where you want to be, if it's not aligned to how you want to be actually spending your money?
Yeah. I mean, I think for the sake of organization, I think one of the things that you have to do is you have to write down your mandatory expenses. So these are things that are sort of non-negotiable. You have to have a place to live. You have to have a way to get to work. You have to eat food. You have to pay for medical expenses. If you have children, you need to pay for childcare. If both you and your spouse work, or if you're a single spouse. So there's all these things that you have to do, and you have to make your debt payments, or else you will suffer additional financial consequences that aren't going to help you achieve your goals. So you have to get all of those written down. And then, after that, now you have choices to make. So, going through and deciding whether or not the remainder of your budget, which quite honestly, for some folks, is less than half of the income is left because they've spent over half or close to half on living expenses, those things that you have to spend money on. So how do you want to allocate the remaining, let's call it, 10 to 50%? What are the most important things? Do you love having designer clothes? Do you love going out for nice dinners? Whatever those things are, then write that down and fill that bucket first, meaning allocate money to that particular category first. And then when you're out of money, but you still have categories left, then you have to, do another reshuffle and figure out what you can realign and give up in other places if you're to put any income towards those other buckets that aren't currently filled right now.
Yeah, that's great. It's kind of liken it to the federal debt discussions and budget discussions every year. And it's kind of funny because they go, well, we're not going to talk about Social Security, Medicare. We can't do anything about the interest payments on the debt. And, we're not going to cut military spending. And so what's left is this very small sliver that they're actually arguing about. And it's the same in your personal budget. If those other categories are too big of, you got into a house that, maybe you can't afford, or, something happened, job changed, and you're no longer able to, truly afford that. it can really, knock the budget off track, and you don't have any money left, like you said, for the things you actually want to do. So, yeah, that's why this is such an important topic.
And one thing, that is typically missed, I see this very commonly. We all forget because, our memories can only hold so much information. So we often forget about the expenses that only come, one time a year or maybe every couple years. So in your budget, you have to build in the items that occur infrequently. And those things might be, pleasant things like vacations. They might be unpleasant things like having to take care of your car maintenance. You should have an emergency fund. I think we've talked about that in the past. Emergency fund is meant to handle true emergencies, like things that are completely unavoidable and you didn't have any idea that they were going to happen. So like losing your job and having to cover living expenses. That's what your emergency fund is for. Your emergency fund isn't for when your transmission blows up in your car. The fact is, when you own a car, you have to build into your budget auto maintenance. So not just oil changes, tire rotations, replacing your tires, but unexpected things that could happen with your car. And it's difficult to build those things into a budget because they don't occur frequently. And if you're only looking at the last 6 months of spending history, maybe nothing like that happened. So you've got to figure out about how much to put aside for things that happen routinely. Like, for example, if you know that your whole family is going to go home for Thanksgiving, it's going to cost $1,200 to do that. Then you know that you need to save $100 a month to be able to afford to go home for Thanksgiving. So that's a category that doesn't happen monthly, but you sort of know about how much you need to set aside. You can split it up. But for the things like car maintenance, you may not know exactly when things are going to go wrong with your car, when things are going to go wrong with the house or whatever. So you just need to put aside some reasonable amount each month and just keep this in a separate account. So you account for it in your budget, however you keep in track of your budget. That money doesn't go to your emergency fund because that's separate, and it doesn't stay in your checking account because if it's there, you might spend it. It just goes into this other account that is waiting for when, things go wrong that you should expect. So you own a home, you should expect things to go wrong. You own a car, you should expect things to go wrong.
Yeah, that's all great information. Once you have that budget, it really helps you get the rest of your financial house in order. It can allow you to make sure you're putting that money into savings and investments and the other things that you need to be doing to again improve your financial health. So
and so Mike, we've skipped around a little bit. Can you sort of put a bow on this, boil this down for us? What are the key takeaways in terms of, how to think about a budget, how to build a budget, and how to track a budget?
Sure. The big thing is don't get wrapped up in the process. It can be as easy or complex as you need it to be, but pick something that's going to work for you. Capture your spending, and then look at it and make sure it aligns with your values. And 2 is taking the inventory, mandatory expenses, and then deciding on the discretionary piece, and making sure you're not missing those things that are infrequent. And then finally, if a tool is going to help you, lots of them out there, consider finding one that works for you. And I guess I teased this in the beginning and we didn't hit on it, but I kind of do the reverse budgeting piece where, again, I do, I handle all the mandatory expenses, those things that, got to come out to pay the mortgage and savings and investing, and all the utilities come out automatically. And then I just like to spend what's left. I do track everything, not specifically to say, oh, I spent $100 in going out this month. I can't do anything else like that. I just go back after the fact and go, did this really align with what I want it to be? But I'm not tracking it on a monthly or a weekly basis to understand. So I guess my point is get the big things right.
Yeah. And I do it a little bit differently because I enjoy budgeting, so I do it pretty regularly. I do use an app for myself that works for me and my family. But I want to point out, if you make just a little bit of money, you should have a budget. If you make a whole lot of money, you should also have a budget. Budgeting seems like kind of those things, one of those financial, personal finance topics that you can sort of hand wave. Quite honestly, if you don't get the budgeting right, it doesn't matter. If you make $1 million a year, but you spend 1.1 million, you're not achieving your long-term financial goals. So it really doesn't matter how much money you make. You should have a process that allows you to ensure that your money is aligned to your goals. And if some of your goals are in the future, then some of that money should be aligned to the future.
No, that's great. And so, kind of as we wrap up, this was, kind of the nuts and bolts of budgeting. We like to talk about, military retirement and ultimate retirement. So we're going to do 2 more shows, basically, specifically around those transitions, budgeting in ultimate retirement, as well as the military piece. If this was a little, people are saying, I've got budgeting down. Tune back in to listen to the when we talk about the transition piece and how important it is to understand those budgeting specifics, because if you haven't gone through it before, there are gotchas out there that you need to be aware of. So, Amy, I look forward to catching up with you next time and talking about, the military transition budget.
That sounds great. I'm looking forward to it, Mike. Take care.
All right. Bye.
To get transcripts, show notes, or more information, go to operationretirementreadiness.com. Have a question or topic for the podcast? Send it to info@operationretirementreadiness.com. Find out more about Amy and Mike at their websites. Mike is the founder of Next Mission Financial Planning, LLC. He retired from the U.S. Air Force and has worked in the financial services sector since 2021. He is a certified financial planner, chartered financial consultant, and a certified college financial consultant. You can find out more about Mike at nextmissionfinancialplanning.com. Amy is the founder of Instar Financial Planning, LLC. She is retired from the U.S. Army and has worked in the financial services sector since 2019. She's a certified financial planner, a chartered federal employee benefits counselor, and a chartered retirement planning counselor. You can find out more about Amy at instarfp.com.